welcome to the Around the Ring Extreme Rules 2017 YouTube exclusive review. I am one half of your host, Silky Dave Brown, joined with, as always, by our Floyd and Savior, Floyd Johnson Jr. How you doing this morning, sir?
I am doing well. The night that Raw gets extreme, it has been basically G-rated now, so it's not extreme anymore. I wish they would just come up with a different name for it.
Yeah, it's extreme in that it's not just standard matches. It's very it's extreme light, diet extreme.
It's like the specialty matches to me. Now you can get Money in the Bank, the ladder matches, and all that stuff. To me, once they got rid of blood, it kind of took away from the specialty matches because the danger aspect was always punctuated. Blood was a part of the storytelling. I'm not saying have blood in every match, but if you're going to have a steel cage match or some type of hardcore match, blood helps sell the story.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. There was nothing particularly like vicious. There were a few spots here and there, but overall, I thought it was an enjoyable show. I mean,
no, I'm not saying it's not. It was very enjoyable, but to me, the title of the pay-per-view, especially in wrestling, being a script and scripted program, the title should go with what you're kind of seeing, you know. And it's just like it's called Extreme, and it's like basically a kid on tricycle saying they're doing extreme biking.
I'm a BMX master, bitches. On his trike. That's awesome. Well, we're going to go through here match by match and give our thoughts on it. But like I said, overall, I thought it was a very enjoyable show. Certainly better than most Raws have been recently. And it made me wish that, you know, the show itself was actually like this. It was funny. In our Facebook group, The Club, a couple people mentioned that they were getting ready for Sunday Night Raw, as they called the pay-per-view beforehand, and that made me laugh.
It's a really good version of Raw. It really is. I mean, even so, you got, you know, the Universal title's not a part of it. It even feels more Raw-like.
Yeah, and you know what? That made me think as I'm watching this. I thought, you know, instead of having it so basically every 2 to 3 weeks we have a pay-per-view, why not instead have it so that there is still a pay-per-view every month, just each show switches off, and then in the months that you don't have that, you make one of your shows, like either, because SmackDown's done this before, where they've treated an episode like a pay-per-view. So then you build up a Raw, and you say, okay, this is our off month. We're going to make this Raw really freaking special and plan it out. Say this is going to be, we're going to have a Universal title defense. We're going to have all the titles on the line, some stip matches, the whole 9 yards, and build it up like something important. And that I think would help the ratings. Because,
but you can't charge more for tickets when you do that.
Yeah, but I mean, they have to do something about the long-term slipping in the ratings. This is something we haven't talked about on the show. Speaking of, we are a weekly podcast. If you're just finding us for the first time on YouTube, you can find us on AroundTheRingOK.com. You can follow us on Twitter at AroundTheRingOK, and give us a like on the Facebook.com/AroundTheRingOK. The show is available on Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and Spreaker, so all the great places to get your podcasts. Just had to throw that in there. But the Raw's ratings have really suffered, and they talk a lot about ratings don't matter like they used to. When a very large portion of your income comes from a TV deal from Universal, NBC Universal, when it comes time in a couple years for them to renegotiate that deal, believe me, if these ratings, if these lows, the absolute lows keep getting lower, WWE is going to have no power where it comes to that negotiations, and they're going to lose a lot. So I think in the long run, the better thing is, don't worry about your ticket sales for one show a month, and instead have a special Raw. You could call them super shows. Hell, and if it's the one a month super show of either Raw or SmackDown, sell those tickets for a little bit more because they're special events. But you need to, and we've talked about this before, less is more. We got to tone some of this back. I mean, hell, it's what, 2-3 weeks before Money in the Bank?
It's 2 weeks.
Oh,
Exactly
God.
2 weeks.
Exactly.
It's on,
Exactly.
on the 18th. Well, now it's 13 days, but it was exactly 2 weeks yesterday.
Yep.
And then it's 3 weeks until, then 3 weeks from them we'll be doing Great Balls of Fire.
Oh my God! When you mentioned, the name should have something to do with the theme of the show, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm having visions of just a bunch of balls on fire hanging around.
We're gonna have an Inferno match.
Inferno match. Maybe there's gonna be a piano match, and then no one would get that joke. Yes. How much? I wonder if they're gonna get Jerry Lee Lewis to show up.
Is he alive?
He is.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
There you go. That's how relevant he is.
Yeah.
He's alive.
Well, let's go through this card. So I did not watch the pre-show. Was there a pre-show match?
There was a pre-show match. It was an exciting match of Kalisto versus Apollo Crews. Man, doesn't that get you ready for a show?
Man, if that doesn't scream, who cares? I don't know what does.
So they did. So Apollo Crews does his standing shooting star spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Kalisto kicks out of it. And Titus, he jumps up, goes to Titus O'Neil, and says, I did the flip. What do you want me to do now? Like, just do, you don't know how to wrestle? What? It was a very confusing moment. Kalisto, of course, runs up behind him, kicks Titus O'Neil, and does the Selena del Sol to get the win. But it was just they have this opportunity with the Titus O'Neil character to get a person that is charismatic and that can talk. And you can give a lot of people that can't cut promos well in the WWE, you can give him a stable. Or you could give him like a lower card stable. You could add Curtis Axel or Heath Slater, Rhino. People that haven't been getting time, you can have join the Titus brand. So you have a way to build it, but instead you go the route of you're already going to have, looks like you're going to have Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil arguing and fighting and maybe starting a feud, which is, to me, would be dumb because Apollo Crews beating Titus O'Neil does nothing for Apollo Crews, and Titus O'Neil beating Apollo Crews does nothing for Titus O'Neil. You got two just basic jobbers. So I feel like it was okay, here's a great idea. I've seen some of my friends getting excited about it, and they went the wrong way. That match should have ended with Apollo Crews using the tights to beat Kalisto. And not necessarily going all the way heel, but doing a heelish act. And then you can have the slow burn of him turning heel.
Yeah, so it's laughable to think that Uhaa Nation would ask Titus O'Neil for wrestling tips.
Like, what do I do next?
Yeah, that's...
Uhaa Nation, that's what you do.
Yeah, and, the other thing, that spot that he does, it used to be standing moonsault into a standing shooting star press.
Yep.
And that's impressive when he does the two at once. If he just does one or the other, that's not that big of a deal. It was
honestly, no, the way he does the standing shooting star, it is pretty impressive. But it used to be the Uhaa combination. It was the gorilla press slam, the gorilla press slam, the moonsault, and then the shooting star, and that's how he finished the match. And it's just like, did you forget how to wrestle? Yeah, that whole scene, that whole part just didn't make sense to me. As Titus O'Neil, a guy whose win-loss record is probably on the level of Jinder Mahal's, what do you do next?
Yeah, that's just idiotic. It makes me weep inside.
Got me talking about the pre-show. I actually paid attention and talked about the pre-show.
There you go. Was there anything else noteworthy during the pre-show?
They did one of those things where they interviewed the Hardys and asked the softball questions that nobody actually cares the answers to. And I know people get on Twitter and they ask those softball questions just so they can see their name on it. But everyone knows they're not going to answer anything anyone actually wants to know.
Yeah, like when are you going to get the broken gimmick from Anthem?
Yeah, or Matt and Jeff. How does it feel to be back in the WWE? How many times have they answered that question?
Yeah, no kidding. You know what would have been a good question? Matt and Jeff, do you like owls?
Yes. You like owls? Yeah, noble creature.
Yes. All right. Well, the show proper itself started out with the Intercontinental title match. The Miz with Maurice challenging Dean Ambrose with the belt changing on a DQ stipulation. Now, here's one thing that just irked me to no end, is they kept saying, in describing the stipulation of this match, they would say, if Dean Ambrose is disqualified, he will lose the Intercontinental title. Instead of, why didn't they just say, the title can change on a DQ?
Yeah. That would have probably been the main. It seemed like they were focusing on him being a lunatic, and I understand he is. But if him being disqualified on purpose had been a problem in the past few years, it seemed like it would have been definitely him losing it. So like the 3 weeks leading up to the show, he should have wrestled different people, and they should have pissed him off in a way where he got DQ'd each time.
Exactly.
And then when you get to this match, that drive home and enforces the fact that this happens all the time. He loses it and gets disqualified. So this is all Miz is trying to do this whole match, is to get him to lose it. The fact that it only happened once, you know what I'm saying? Someone tried to kick you in the nuts and you kicked them back in the nuts. That's not really you going on an emotional, that's not you really losing it. It's just, hey, you tried to do this to me, I did it to you first. So I just felt like the groundwork had not been laid for the story they were trying to tell for this match.
Exactly. It was, he got DQ'd one time for a nut shot. And and here's the other thing I was wondering. So at one point, Miz ripped off the turnbuckle, and Dean Ambrose is about to throw Miz into the turnbuckle, and the ref was like, no, you better not. I'm like, when? I have never seen someone get DQ'd for an exposed turnbuckle shot.
If it's deemed intentional, you do DQ'd. If you've noticed in the way it's always done where the referee didn't see you throw him into the exposed turnbuckle, or it was deemed accidental.
Oh, yeah, okay. So another thing I did like about this match, something they did with the pre-match stuff and the commentary, is they acknowledged the fact that this feud went back to SmackDown.
Yeah, that was really cool.
That was cool.
Some context to it.
Yeah, and one other thing that bugged me is the fact that Miz hit Daniel Bryan / Kenta's running knee, and Michael Cole was like, oh, he hit him with like a drop kick. I'm like, dude, what? How did you miss that? It's just... Then again, this guy blocked me on Twitter for saying, could you please learn the difference between a head scissor takeover and a Hurricane Rana?
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me say this in Michael Cole's defense. He came from the news area to wrestling. He is a sports entertainment announcer. He is not a wrestling announcer. They had an elite wrestling announcer, and they didn't want him. So he obviously does it the way Vince McMahon wants him to do it. And in essence, and when you come down to it, and it sucks, and I'm like, it's just kind of a devil's advocate moment. You do what your boss tells you to do. Vince doesn't care if he says the names right unless it's the signature moves of the wrestlers. You can't get the drive-by wrong. You can't get the spear wrong. You can't get any of the names of the moves that matter wrong. But yeah, that being called some type of drop kick maneuver, Vince didn't care about that. He probably doesn't know what it's actually called.
Well, okay, so yeah, okay, fair. That's fair enough. But two things to counter that. One, Michael Cole's been doing this for 20 years.
And he still doesn't really like wrestling. I still attest to that.
Okay, but two, he has called matches where Daniel Bryan has used that very move to win championships, and he called it correctly. Now,
Yeah.
now, the only thing I can think is the camera work on this show was wonky. They missed like key spots at times, and maybe he just didn't. The angle he saw, he didn't see it. And if that was the case, if all he saw was a weird angle of Miz flying and Ambrose going down, I can forgive that. But then as soon as he goes into the other Daniel Bryan-y moves, which it does beg the question, since he is no longer interacting with Daniel Bryan, why is he still trying to stick it to Daniel Bryan, other than he kind of likes these moves now and has incorporated them into his repertoire?
And yeah, it's become a part of his gimmick.
So that bugged me. One thing I will say, I love the finish, that it looked like it was going to be a DQ, and then Miz hit the skull crushing finale and got the clean win. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, you know what? He never forgets. He never forgets to say, "This has been brought to you by Mountain Dew Kickstart."
Who, Michael Cole?
Yeah, never forgets that.
Of course not. Of course not.
Because that's what's important to Vince.
Yeah.
Or the WWE brand as a whole. That's what's important, is getting your advertising out there. Missing a move name that's not part of a brand, they don't care. They don't care that he calls it a Shining Wizard. They don't care. All they care about, get the brand name in and make sure you say Skull Crushing Finale or Dirty Deeds, because those are part of the people's brands.
Yeah, it's just it's irritating.
You do a DDT. It's a front face lock drop type of maneuver. I don't know what's going on there.
The other thing I will say about this match, I think this is the best Dean Ambrose match I've seen in months.
Yeah, he really brought it, and it's funny because you know what, they used to say that about Hogan. He always brought it when he lost. That's when his best matches were, when he lost. So he really brought it. I thought the match in my eyes was booked really well. If they put it together or if they worked with an agent, they did it really well because it told a story. The announcing team didn't tell the right story, but the match itself told the story. And then at the end, I love how they swerved that Dean's about to get DQ'd and Miz wins by pin. I thought that those were all brilliantly done. And I said it yesterday, and I'll say it again. Miz does not need the Intercontinental title, but the Intercontinental title needs the Miz, and it is finally back home.
Yeah, agreed. This was a completely fun match. Next up we had Rich Swann and Sasha Banks taking on Noam Dar and Alicia Fox. Great pop for Swann. When he first came out, before I put two and two together and the announcers mentioned that it was his hometown, and he got this huge pop, I was like, holy fuck, they love the Rich Swann. But then they were like, oh yeah, it's his hometown, and a lot of times anyone will get a huge pop in their hometown. But this was fun. It was short, to the point. It did not overstay its welcome. And it was Rich Swann got the pin, and the baby faces won like we knew they would. You had any thoughts on this one?
Rich Swann and Sasha Banks have very good chemistry. If it wasn't the world where we know everything about the wrestlers personally, I could see like a dating gimmick going on. But Sasha Banks is married. Not only married, she's married to the costume designer that designs all the costume, including Rich Swann, including Rich Swann. But I could, like I said, a little old school, a little kayfabe area. I could just go in and turning on him, and then going back to her boss gimmick. Basically, she doesn't need a man or anything like that. But again, all that goes away because we know about the reality, which is Sasha Banks.
Correct. Yeah. Next up, we had. Oh, well, here's something else that bugged me. Have there always been full-blown commercial breaks in pay-per-views?
No, the WWE Network exclusives, like, you could not buy this show on pay-per-view. Like, okay. You could not go to a cable provider and buy the show on pay-per-view. Because on the network exclusives, you do get commercials. But if this was like one that you could buy on pay-per-view too, let's say a SummerSlam, WrestleMania, you would not get that.
Okay. Then that is, I guess, fair. But yeah.
I mean, it's not fair to me. If you call it a pay-per-view, I shouldn't get commercials.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree with you, but it took me a second to notice that difference.
All right, then we had the Drifter come out. So here I'm like, why do they really not have enough to do? So
no, he's over in the club. He's over with me. I love that his promos are songs, and I thought that was pretty cool. It was basically, instead of having a backstage segment where he said everything he just said, he said it in a song in the middle of the ring. I had no problem with it.
So here was my train of thought during this, and these were actually my notes. And for no reason, we have the Drifter in the ring. Oh God, he's so bad. So was that just to kill time? They have hundreds of fuckers on payroll, and they do this. That all having been said, it was so bad, it was kind of good. Yeah,
he's a heel. It kind of reminds me of a honky tonk man doing a performance. It's like I said, it's new, it's current, it works on Raw. It works on the main roster. It did not work on NXT where everybody's all about the wrestling. But in the show part, like I said, if you listen to the song, it's a promo. So that is so cool to me. It's different. I mean, to me, in a world where everybody does everything the same, and it's in this WWE cookie cutter box, it's actually different.
That is true. It is, yeah, that is true. So yeah. It's just, it was my initial.
He's a horrible singer, and I think that's a part of the promo. And I think a lot of the do with you is that you're a music guy too. So like,
yeah,
this is horrible. I'm like, he's playing and let me make sure he's like playing the same chord over and over again, right?
Oh yeah, he's playing like 3 chords. Very basic stuff. But it's like, okay, so they have so many people on this roster, and this pay-per-view was very thin as far as the number of matches, and they bring this guy out, which, I mean, it got him tons of heat. So yeah, I mean, and again, by the end of it, I was actually like, okay, that was so awful, it was kind of good. All right, so next up we had the kendo stick on a pole match. Brought to us by Vince Russo. Bayley challenging Alexa Bliss for the Women's Championship. There was at one point, Alexa just hit Bayley square in the freaking head with that kendo stick. And the ref made her stay back to make sure Bayley was okay. Whew, there was another headshot later on in a different match we'll get to. But here's what I liked about this match. Alexa won, and Alexa won decisively. I mean, there was back and forth in this match, but when it came to the end, there was no question, there was no shenanigans. Alexa Bliss won. Just done.
Remember I told you there would be less than 10 kendo stick shots, right?
Yes. What was the count? I
posted it on the Twitter. It was 8.
8? Only 8?
There were only 8 kendo stick shots total.
Wow.
Yeah, and they were all on Bayley. I'm just like, you know what? They went the least extreme route that they could. The match. It's like, oh, this is extreme. And I love that the whole stick on the pole part of it was done within like 2 minutes. They knocked that out early.
Thank God. Yeah, that was...
Bayley, the hesitation on using the kendo stick, that was all great, and it was basically a squash match after she got the kendo stick.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and I love Alexa winning. I love her winning so convincingly. It was just like, okay, that ends that feud. Let's do something else now.
But it does make you wonder, what exactly are they going to do with freaking with Bayley? I mean,
and she'll have somebody that tries to pick on her. There'll probably be some kind of number one contender match at this point, and she'll be in that and she'll lose, and maybe she'll feud with Sasha Banks. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with the whole Bayley situation. She really needs to get her fan base back. It looks like the crowd is starting to turn on her, so they need to go back to her being Bayley, and it's funny because everyone's crapping on her gimmick now. Like, even Nia Jax on the pre-show was like, "We're so tired of hearing about this is your dream," and it's like, it's not really her saying it. It's Michael Cole.
Yeah, and they need to stop that, because that was some of what was her in NXT, but a lot of what was her in NXT was, here's this girl who's gotten the crap kicked out of her for a long time, and she's just fighting back and fighting through it and eventually wins.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they're doing. They have to beat her down, because she came in and she rocketed straight to the top. I mean, from the day she was on Raw, she was in the title picture. And, I mean, to be fair, she came out of NXT having been, a very long time champion. She was one of the biggest draws on that brand. And so they kind of had to put her in that position. But sometimes when people come in and they're just shot, they shoot straight to the top, it's like, well, where the crap else do you go?
My whole thing is, I was very clear that I don't like Bayley, but the best story for Bayley would have been her going a year or two without winning the championship and finally winning the title at WrestleMania. Even this year, when she beat Charlotte at the pay-per-view, it shouldn't have happened at the pay-per-view. Her WrestleMania moment should have been her dropping that big elbow off the top rope, a la Macho Man, and finally becoming the champion there.
Yeah, speaking of that elbow drop, so they recently, WWE signed, and I'm blanking on her name, but one of
Is it Low?
They've signed a couple ladies from Japan, but one of them used the elbow drop as a finishing maneuver, and they legit told her, you need to find a new finishing maneuver, because Bayley uses that from time to time.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I don't really like it because they're on NXT, and I don't mind people in NXT having similar finishers to people in the main roster, because then once you go to the main roster, maybe your finisher changes, a la Ty Dillinger.
I would almost rather have it. I don't care if people use the same finisher. And in fact, at some point, well, especially with multiple brands, if you have someone on SmackDown and someone on Raw that uses the same finisher, who freaking cares? At some point, if they meet in the ring, it's the battle of the whatever the hell.
You got a gimmick. You got a reason for them to fight. The battle of our elbow drop, the battle of the sharpshooter, a la Sting and Bret Hart. I remember it was a battle of the Iron Claw back in the day. I mean, it's who did the best snap suplex. I remember that was like the whole reason Dynamite Kid and somebody wrestled, and I don't remember who it was now. But I'm just like, that was a reason to wrestle.
That
did it better.
That is real quick aside. Who did have the best snap suplex?
I thought Chris Benoit was my favorite. And I know it was just basically Dynamite Kids, but Chris Benoit was my favorite.
Yeah, mine too. But Dynamite Kid was probably just right up there.
The best. Yeah. And it was funny because they were talking about it on Once Upon a Time. Chris Benoit was like, the dude's like, I don't know if I'm ready. He's like, you better get ready because you're going over. Because that was the thing with the snap suplex. You didn't need any help from the other person. It was their job to take the bump right.
Nice. Well, next up we had Cesaro and Sheamus challenging the Hardy Boys in a tag team match for tag team titles in a steel cage. And this was interesting. They had a escape-only rules. Haven't seen that for a while. But more than that, it was both team members had to reach the floor. So theoretically, you could have had one guy from each team outside of the ring and the two others fight. And then I guess once you're out of the cage, you're supposed to stay out, but that didn't happen in this match.
There's no DQ, so you don't have to stay out.
True. One thing, early in the match, at one point, Cesaro just freakishly climbed the ropes and the cage, and it was like, I was like, damn, does this dude do parkour? Does he hang out with Johnny Mundo on his days off?
Well, in CrossFit is a lot of the same muscles that's used during that. So, I mean, it is very much a lot of the same thing there.
Well, and we did get a crazy Jeff Hardy spot, as we knew we would. And Cesaro and Sheamus got the win. I enjoyed this. I thought this was a great match. Lots of fun.
I thought it was a great match, and I have no, there's sometimes in wrestling where you don't really have a problem with predictability. And before this match even started, I was like, so Matt's gonna get stuck out of the ring, and then Matt's gonna get Jeff's gonna do some kind of crazy bump. Matt's gonna be able to get out, and Jeff's not going to be able to get out, and that's how they lose. That's pretty much what happened. I thought it was leading more into the broken gimmick, and the way it ended with them barely losing didn't seem like it led to the broken gimmick. It seems like we're going to see them again at the next pay-per-view.
Oh, I'm sure there'll be a rematch because, they get their contractual rematch, so that'll happen. And
I'd like it to be a tag match at the end of a Raw as a main event of Raw instead of at the next pay-per-view.
Yeah. And if this leads to them feuding for a while longer, I'm totally okay with that because these four guys work really well together.
The spot where they both jumped off with Matt Hardy, it was supposed to be like a spike. What's
white
Sheamus?
Noise?
Yeah, it was supposed to be like a spike white noise, but you saw Cesaro didn't really get the part of it. I would have liked him to come off with more of a neck breaker, so it would have been white noise and a neck breaker at the same time. It would have been more visual. It would have been actually adding to the move, but more of a visual.
That would have been super hard to pull off. As it is, it was.
But of course, I hold Cesaro to a higher level than everyone else.
Oh, sure, he could pull off anything.
Exactly.
The one thing when that came down, you noticed that Sheamus's leg hit first. I'm sure to cushion some of it, but that could have gone really bad. I mean, he could have snapped something.
It took a really strong person to pull that move off without hurting Matt.
Yeah, or themselves.
There was the one part where Matt came off the top and Cesaro was already on the ground. He pretty much landed right on his arm, and I thought he had broke Cesaro's arm for a moment there. Because Cesaro very rarely shows pain during the match, other than him selling. But he landed right on his arm, and he yelled at the ref something.
Yeah. It was. We got new tag champions, so that was good.
It was a great match.
Yeah.
And man, I would have said it stole the show, but the main event was so good.
The main event was. Next up, we have Austin Aries challenging Neville for the Cruiserweight title in a submission match, which apparently can also have DQs and countouts. But, okay. I guess by the stipulations of this match, you just can't win by pinfall.
Yep. You can win every other way but pinfall.
Okay.
That was stupid, and I felt like the match, because of that, made the match kind of stupid. But it was a great, and it's weird that I say that, because physically it was a great match. The psychology of the match kind of made it stupid.
Yeah, the stip was weird. It made it off-putting. But, I don't know. The thing was, bell to bell, it was completely enjoyable. These two guys work really well together. It was a fun match. A couple things I noticed. One, I think they've changed Austin Aries' intro music a little bit. And I don't know if I'm right on that. I'm going to have to listen to a few more of his when he comes out to the ring next few times, but it sounded a little bit different. And two, and I haven't mentioned this before, I keep forgetting to, is it just me, or does the Cruiserweight belt itself, the strap part of it, look really cheap? It looks kind of like bad plastic. It doesn't look like leather like the other ones do. Like the other ones look, weighty and expensive. And this just, there's something about, it's almost like the plastic on like a dodgeball kind of thing. I don't know. That's just me, maybe.
I would say I can't say I paid attention. The Cruiserweight belt, I've always thought it was cool because it was the most different looking belt in the WWE.
That is true. But yeah, this one, Neville eventually did get the win. That at the end, that red arrow where his knees went straight into Austin Aries' spine looked so brutal.
And then, the Rings of Saturn, and he tapped out like immediately. I thought that was pretty cool. And it was funny because, you do get some foreshadowing in wrestling, even though people don't really talk about it. When he tapped outside of the ring, I looked at the girlfriend and said, "All right, that means Neville's going over."
I kind of had that feeling too.
Yeah, and then he goes in the ring, and it's fun. It's great because Neville is what the division needs. We said that yesterday. Neville is what the division needs. I don't think Austin Aries would. I didn't think it was his time to be champion yet. I feel like Neville should kind of go through everybody on the roster. I'm hoping Cedric Alexander's the next number one contender. And then maybe, if you want to do it correctly or something like that, maybe either Grand Metalik or Kalisto is to finally find the person to finally beat Neville.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I was going to mention that when you talked about the pre-show. Why haven't they put Kalisto in the Cruiserweight division?
I think they want that Rey Mysterio love. They want him to be the Rey Mysterio type right now. And I don't know if Kalisto wants to be in the Cruiserweight. I mean, he never wrestles people his size. Like, ever.
Well, it's because he's a freaking hobbit.
I mean, that's true, but I'm just saying he doesn't wrestle people his size. And you know what? They can want you to go to the Cruiserweight division all you want to. And you can say no. I mean...
Yeah, and at some point, though, they could probably say, you can go to the Cruiserweight division, or you can sit at home.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone...
I mean, think about Neville, like someone like Neville. He wasn't on TV before they left. And they say, hey, we're going to bring you back in the Cruiserweight division, and we're going to make you the champion. You're going to be on TV every week. Okay, yes. Not on TV at all, or the champion in the Cruiserweight division. I'm guessing they're not going to offer Kalisto the same thing because... Like I said, they really do need Neville as the champion. The longer he holds the belt, whenever that next guy wins, that makes him way more over.
Yeah. And see, I would rather them wait on Cedric. I would like to give Cedric a slow build and maybe at SummerSlam or Royal Rumble. And in fact, you know what? Let Neville hold it to the Rumble. That way he'll have it a year. And maybe Cedric is the guy who finally beats him. But then again, I would almost rather see Cedric in the Rumble itself. So yeah, that was that. I enjoyed this. It was fun. It didn't. One thing I will say, none of these matches really felt like a piss break. I think they were all pretty darn enjoyable.
They were. I can say that. I agree with that.
Yeah, speaking of enjoyable, we get to the main event. Bray Wyatt, Seth Rollins, Samoa Joe, Finn Balor, and Roman Reigns in an Extreme Rules Fatal 5-Way for the opportunity to face Brock Lesnar at Balls Deep in 5 weeks.
Great balls of fire, sir.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
You know what? I thought all of these guys got really good reactions when they came out.
Yeah, somebody said... And it was funny to say this. They said it, that Finn Balor did the most in this match, and everybody else just tried to get their stuff in. I'm like, Finn Balor does the same moves. He tries to switch them up, but it's the same moves. The only thing I thought was really, really significant that Finn Balor did was that kick to Roman Reigns' face in the match. I really thought he kicked him in the face.
Yeah, that was great. I thought they all did really well. I thought this was because you made a comment the other day on our Twitter feed that Finn Balor can be a little boring in his matches sometimes.
Yeah.
And on a standard Raw match, yeah, he can kind of do paint by numbers, go through the motions. In a lot of ways, he is at that point where he's kind of like Shinsuke Nakamura. He can do a hell of a lot in the ring. But he is so over, and partially because of his awesome entrance, that he doesn't need to do a hell of a lot in the ring.
And that's the whole thing. I'm always going to be the AJ Styles guy. AJ Styles tries to put on the best match of the night every night, and that's the level I expect from my wrestlers. Even Kevin Owens, I feel, does the same thing, and that's what I expect from our wrestlers. And Finn Balor as being one of the best wrestlers in the world, and the fact that I know his talent, I expect him to have the best match every night.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I, as a fan, like it, but I can see, why they do it, or maybe they're even told to. But I thought this match, with just the way everything worked in this, it was really good. And, you saw some different things out of Roman Reigns, I thought was cool. And there were, even though Roman came out to a lot of boos, there were cheers for him. And there was a moment when he had a series where he was just on fire, and people were into it big time. And I love the fact that he was dead to rights from Finn, and then Samoa Joe snuck in, got the coquina clutch on, and got the win. I wish they had acknowledged the fact that Finn and Joe had a long feud in NXT, because they talked about the other feuds that have happened. And I got to give props. Roman's spear through Joe and Finn on the outside of the ring through the barricade, where I think they almost killed the timekeeper, was awesome. This is another spot, though. The camera work was off. It was like they weren't quite in a good position to really capture that moment. And that's very unusual for WWE. WWE normally has their cameras in the perfect spots for everything. But that was one where they didn't quite catch that as well as they should have. And then, of course, you get Seth Rollins being a crazy man.
It seems like he wants to tear his knee up again.
He does. Frog splash off the top through the announce table.
And it looked like his knees landed right on the edge of the announce table. Then he did that thing where he did the backflip, twisting backflip over the top of Roman Reigns. It was like, yeah, they better make sure his knee was 100% because he really does test it.
Yeah, he went for the Phoenix Splash, and Roman got out of the way, and so he landed on his feet, which I'm sure is not good for your knees anyway. He was when in one of the replays of that frog splash, it looked like, because at first it looks like his knees hit the edge of the table, but then from another angle it looked like maybe his knees landed straight on Bray's shin, which would also hurt really bad. So either way, that was a bad bump. It looked amazing, and the crowd was just bonkers. And I love that Samoa Joe won. Samoa Joe will take on Brock Lesnar at Great Balls of Fire. Completely fresh match, something we've never seen. And Samoa Joe has the aura of a badass, so I can completely believe him in a fight with Brock Lesnar.
And that's the goal in life, is always to have fresh balls.
Yeah. So
I wasn't gonna go. I have SummerSlam August 20th. It's like, you know what? Financially, I'm gonna go ahead and skip Great Balls of Fire and just make sure I'm at SummerSlam. But Samoa Joe actually winning, I know that had been the odds-on favor, but now that he actually won, and it's Samoa Joe versus Brock Lesnar, I gotta be in the building. It's just, it wouldn't be me if I'm not in the building. It's probably going to be the most physical match in WWE history, because you got two guys that can legitimately go. It's not going to be three moves over and over, a la Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. Samoa Joe's going to, if Brock Lesnar shows up and he wants to make his money and he wants to work, they're going to put on a hell of a match.
Yeah, and I suspect that Joe will have no troubles, if need be, getting stiff with Brock.
And I think that's the biggest concern, because the biggest idea is, because in an actual MMA fight, based on training and stuff, I would probably take Joe, because he is an actual striker. This is what he does. Just like I know Brock Lesnar was the MMA world champion, but I'm just saying someone of the same physical size that can swing with him, and he might actually have the speed advantage when it comes to Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, especially now. I mean, if it was, Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, no, it's 45-year-old Brock Lesnar. I'm not saying, I agree completely with you
Yeah. But this is something to think about. Samoa Joe, who spent the majority of his career in TNA, is going to be headlining a WWE pay-per-view, going for a world title.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
Yeah, a lot of people, I mean, especially Triple H, credit with Samoa Joe with when he brought him in and how hard he worked and how much a professional is, that he is the reason the TNA floodgates opened. It's like, wow, these people actually do know how to work, and they can work our way. They understand television production because they were in a lower level television production for a lot of years.
Yeah, and it's not like TNA had terrible production values. They don't.
Yeah, no, just even if it was horrible, just being on TV and understanding, being in the right positions for camera shots and stuff like that, it gives you a base knowledge that will help you once you get to the WWE.
And Samoa Joe was the first TNA, I mean, not including Xavier Woods, who did a cup of coffee in TNA, but a real TNA star. Samoa Joe was the first one, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it was like they put the NXT belt on, and they said he opened up the floodgates. He made the AJ Styles and the Nakamura's and all those people like that. Now Bobby Roode, he made it possible because he was such a professional. If he'd come in and he started thinking his shit didn't stink and was hired, a lot of those people probably wouldn't have got hired after.
Yep. Well, that is Great Balls of Fire. No, that's next. God, I can't get past that name.
That was Extreme Rules.
Yes, thank you.
One night of the year where the WWE goes extreme.
Except, for Hell in a Cell.
And you know what? As far as the show, I gave the show an A. But as far as the sticking with the theme, I gave it an F. So I'm sticking with a B for the show.
Yeah, I think this is a B+.
Yeah. Because I'm like, if it would have actually got extreme at any point, I might have given it an A.
Had this been an episode of Monday Night Raw, it would have been excellent.
An A+. Yeah, I would have given it an A+. And I hope Brock's on tonight. I hope he is.
Now, this is also going to be an interesting dynamic because right now Brock's kind of a heel. He's a tweener-leaning heel. And Samoa Joe's full-blown heel.
He was a face.
Well, he was a face in that people were already getting sick of Goldberg, and you've got Smarky McSmarkerton town that you're living in, and at that point they're sick of Goldberg. So and the Smarks tend to like Brock. Brock is this weird guy. Smarks are like, man, these part-timers, they don't show up very often. Until they then show up and they lose their freaking mind. Because I don't care how smarky you are. When The Rock's music hits, a smile gets on your face and you get excited. I don't give a fuck who you are.
I purposely no-sold Goldberg and Brock Lesnar for that reason. I don't believe in hypocrisy until that case when it comes to wrestling. I'm not going to say I hate someone and then when they come out, go crazy and cheer for them. Screw that. But that's just me. I'm weird.
There you go.
If Joe Brock Lesnar face off, it's going to be amazing. Paul Heyman's promo, because he has this way of putting over the guy and then saying Brock Lesnar is just that much better than you. You're great, but Brock Lesnar is better. So I wonder how he's going to do it, and if he's going to go like, I've seen you, I've watched you for years, I know what you do to people, that kind of thing. I am very interested in Paul Heyman's promo. It's like, even if I'm at work and I'm busy, I'm going to make sure to go back and watch that.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Paul Heyman does with this.
Yeah.
So that is going to do it for this. Now, by popular demand, well, I can't really say that. We've had some requests. Because I'm not full of myself. Some folks have asked if we could start putting the YouTube exclusives onto our regular feeds so you can get them on iTunes and Stitcher and Spreaker and download it as an MP3 to your device or whatever the hell. And we are going to actually start doing that. So this video will be available today on YouTube. Today being Monday, June 5th. I was actually looking at that for way too long before it came out of my mouth. Monday, June 5th, it will be on YouTube. And then starting tomorrow, late night, early morning tomorrow, it will be on our feed. So if YouTube is something you don't easily have access to and you still want to hear the review, it will be up on the feed. So there's that, and we're going to start doing that going forward. So make sure to check out the website aroundtheringok.com. Follow on Twitter at aroundtheringok. You get all the good updates. Plus, you get Floyd live tweeting during the Raw, SmackDown, and the pay-per-views. So that's always good stuff there. And so whenever I'm watching this stuff, I'm always a little bit behind, and I don't like to be spoiled. But my phone's going off. I'm like, someone replied to something you put. And I'm like, I can't look at that. Spoilers.
Yeah. Because I am really just tweeting what's going on in the show and my reactions to it. Sometimes I'll tweet a random thought I just had just to see if I was right. I think we were both 6-0 on the pay-per-view last night, which sucks.
No, well, really? Well, we didn't. We thought Miz was going to win. We thought Rich Swann and Sasha Banks were going to win. Did we think Bayley was going to win, or did we go with Alexa?
We went with Alexa. We both said that made more sense.
Yeah, and we went with Cesaro and Shane. We went with Neville, and I think I said either Joe or Finn, and you said Joe.
Yeah.
So wow, we should probably start keeping track of who we actually predict. So,
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay, great.
6-0. This show, the last show, I missed one, and I think you missed two. It was I keep track.
Okay, thank you for that. Because about the time we finish recording, I shit you not, I forget what I said.
Yeah, I will say this: most of the world was 6-0. It was and that's what I tell people. I don't mind wrestling being predictable sometimes. I mean, but to me, I can know the beginning, I know the end, but use a creative way to get to that end, and I'm okay with it.
Exactly.
And that's what they did last night. Everyone kind of knew the beginning and the end, and they used the creative ways to get to the end, and it was a very enjoyable show. So the odds-on favorite with Vegas all won, and which is funny that people gamble on professional wrestling. If you do, I think you have a problem, and you should probably call someone.
Exactly. Well, that is going to do it for us for now. We will be back on Sunday. That's when the podcast drops every Sunday with a new edition. So we'll talk about everything that happens during the week. And make sure, if you haven't before, please check out our previous episodes. We dropped one yesterday, and it was good stuff. And make sure to give us a like and a subscribe here on YouTube at youtube.com/AroundTheRingOK, which if you're watching this right now, you probably know. But do us a favor, click on that subscribe button. And Floyd, I do have a question for you, sir. Is life a work?
Just know this, all you that may be down, that this is all fixed. Life is a work. Make sure you kick out at 2. We'll see you next time Around the Ring.